Hello everyone, my name is Daly, and today I am representing the 5 Minutes Crypto team to have a friendly discussion, interview, whatever you call it, with the most prominent, most stable coins out there. And you know what I'm talking about. It's USDT Tether, no arguments. And in this conversation, I'm very honored to welcome over Mr. Paolo Ardoino, the CTO from Tether. Here's the man of the hour. Mr. Paolo, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much for having me.
Fantastic. All right, you're looking great. And you know, from the previous conversations that we had before this recording, you from the EU, right? Can you introduce yourself, say hi to the community, and you know, just talk about your roles within Tether?
Absolutely. So I'm currently the CTO of Tether, so Chief Technology Officer. I'm basically the guy that codes behind the scenes and makes sure that Tether remains secure. All the deployments that you do on the different blockchains are as secure as possible. My background is in software development. I started coding when I was 8 years old, pretty much. So now it's 30 years that I'm in the business, you can say. Always passionate about cryptography, about privacy, about peer-to-peer applications. I think the turning point has been with the discovery of the Bitcoin white paper. For me, it was around 2013. In 2014, I joined as a senior software developer for Bitfinex, one of the leading cryptocurrency exchanges. And then in 2016, I became the CTO of Bitfinex, and then in 2017, the CTO of Tether. It has been an interesting journey, crazy. We have seen so many things, but super excited, more excited than before every year.
Dude, I mean, so you've been in the crypto space since 2013 after reading the Bitcoin white paper. 2014 started working for Bitfinex, and only 3 years after that, you became the CTO for Tether. What an incredible journey. Only in 3 years, you have achieved so much. I'm still sitting here 1.5 years later, still hosting this space. Anyway, so we're here to talk about Tether. First of all, let's talk about Tether because you just released your Q1 attestation for 2023. And for the people who don't know what a Q1 attestation is, it's basically a report stating how Tether has performed in Q1 2023, its achievements, some of the things. And first of all, just want to say a very big congratulations to the Tether team on the very impressive success. This is, I would say, the most successful quarter that you've had, right? We're going to talk about that, right? And we are going to talk about in that attestation, the asset categories that you have, because you have several few new ones, how you distribute the assets to and reserves. Next, we will touch on your plans, your Tether's plans in case, let's say, of a financial crisis, very much like what we have experienced in the past year is a terrible situation. And finally, as I said, we are going to talk about Kit.io and related products like Tether Go. Are you ready?
All right, ready.
All right, lovely. So as introduced, Q1 has been an incredible journey for you. In the attestations, Tether shows that you currently operating at $1.48 billion of net profit, which is a very outstanding figure, right? Many investors are wondering about the sources of these profits, and you know, if any of the users' funds are being used to invest, like the traditional banks. And can you clarify how Tether makes profits, please?
Sure. Tether in this moment have one of the biggest portfolios of US Treasury bills on Earth. I think if you would compare Tether to a country, Tether would be the 25th country in terms of how many US T-bills holdings it has. So right now it's around 53 billion, 54 billion dollars in just US T-bills. So they are now the interest rates on these T-bills that are short maturity around around 90 days in general. So we used to go on the 3 months because we think that is the best way to manage risk management, right? So if the shorter the maturity, the less these T-bills are subject to the price swings in case of big increases or decreases of in terms of additional interest rates changes from the Fed. So that's why we focus on short maturity. But you can see that already you have, around the, 54 billion dollars in T-bills, and that it doesn't even count the investment in the money market funds that themselves are invested in T-bills. So actually the figure is quite higher, right? So 85% of Tether reserves are invested in cash and cash equivalents. So that, is generating a comparable yield to around 5%. So you can see how we make money, right? So that is the core of our profits. And of course, a few years ago, the interest rates on T-bills and secure bonds were really, really low. If you think about it, was T-bills, the interest rate on T-bills like 1 year and a half ago were like 15 basis points, between 5 and 15 basis points. So completely different scenario than today. So the profitability of Tether went up immensely just in 1 year and a half. Holding one of the safest assets, or one of the assets considered the safest on the face of the earth, that is the USD bills, right? So the good thing about the USD bills is that being Tether USDT, a stablecoin pegged to the dollar, in case of a liquidity request, right? Imagine that we have to process billions of redemptions per day. We can easily sell these T-bills without basically slippage, get the cash and pay out the redemptions. That is exactly the process that we did in May 2022, when we had to pay back $7 billion in 48 hours. That was 10% of our reserves. And overall, we paid around $20 billion. That was 25% of our reserves in pretty much 20 days. So this process ensured liquidity from high liquidity, because we proved that, right? So we did things that banks could not do. And that was obvious after Silicon Valley Bank and similar actually published their numbers. So Tether has been safer than all these banks that failed in risk management so grossly. And at the same time, maintaining high profitability with having safe assets in the and liquid assets in the portfolio. The other component to the profits come from a small percentage, is around 4% of gold reserves and Bitcoin reserves.
Okay, and I would love to dig more into it because I have to agree, being a stablecoin's liquidity is a very big issue that we all need to take into consideration, right? Look at the banking situation in the past couple of months. They don't have enough liquid assets because they hold a lot of their assets in long-term UST bonds, right? Whereas Tether, you guys hold it in short-term bonds and a bunch of other very liquid assets. And so let's understand more about that. You significantly reduced your cash reserves in Q1 while increasing your exposure to Bitcoin and gold, as you said, 4% in gold and about, is it 1.5% in Bitcoin, correct?
1.8%.
1.8% in Bitcoin, I'm sorry. So you have also recently announced allocating up to like 50% of your net realized operating profits towards purchasing Bitcoin, right? So can you help us to clarify why did you choose Bitcoin and what's the thought process behind it? Because Bitcoin still, a lot of it is a very volatile asset, and even though it's liquid, but if USDT were to sell your Bitcoin, it would create like a huge selling pressure on the market.
Yes, so let me clarify. First of all, we recently announced that we would invest up to 15%, not 50, of our net operative profits. What does this mean? First of all, let's start from the basics, right? Tether has to have enough reserve to cover 100% of the outstanding tokens, right? Everything above that 100% is company equities, excess reserves, is profits, right? These profits, these T-bills that are providing profits are accrued in the company. And in a normal company, right, in normal classic company, these profits eventually should be distributed to shareholders, right? You take all the profits, you distribute them to shareholders, right? So Tether has 100% plus all the profits that are accrued in the company that in theory should be distributed to shareholders. That's how a company should work, right? It's a private company. But what happens here is that these excess reserves, so everything that is on top the 100% reserves that we have, Tether is keeping the majority of it inside the company, right? So far, Tether accrued $2.48 billion in excess reserves, so non-distributed profits. Now, why this is important? Because when yes, we have a portfolio of Bitcoin, right? And you are rightfully saying that it's volatile. But the portfolio of Bitcoin that we have so far, 1.8% of our reserves, is actually around $1.5 billion. And that $1.5 billion is well below, is $1 billion below or less than the $2.5 billion that we have in excess reserves. And so if you think about it, if we only invest 15% of our excess, or if 15% of our net operating profits on a monthly or quarterly basis, so we keep increasing the excess reserves. The majority, or a good part in a way, of the excess reserves remain in cash equivalents. At the same time, we buy up to 15% of this net operative profits of Bitcoin. So let's make an example, right? So let's say that Tether could make $700 million per quarter. So it means that only 15% of that would, around $120 million, could be invested, up to $120 million per quarter would be invested in purchasing additional Bitcoins. But the majority of the remainder, $700 million minus 120, and the majority of that remainder will remain, the company will be used or will remain in a different form, usually cash and cash equivalent. So first of all, the first point I want to make is, if Tether would distribute dividends and the shareholders would buy Bitcoin for themselves, would that be the same thing? But actually, Tether prefers, first of all, to accrue more reserves inside the company in order to withstand to any possible black swan event. So in this way, we are diversifying the excess reserves. We are keeping more money in the company, and I think is much more, really much, much, much more than any other company, including the banking sector, could have done, right? In the banking sector, it's not that they have 100% of all the reserves and they're distributing dividend. They are going in fractional reserve, they are distributing dividend, and they're using people's money to do the craziest things, like buying 10 years municipality bonds, right? So in this moment, Tether has the most solid portfolio that we can find in finance.
Incredible. Yes, agreed. These bankings, they are professional. They use users' funds to invest in very risky portfolios. But when it comes to Tether and USDT, you guys do not touch users' funds. You have 100% of your reserves backed to the amount of USDT in circulation, so people and users can just withdraw money anytime they want. And as proven in 2022, right, you managed to process about less than $20 billion in just 20 days. So that's incredible. All right, so next question that I want to ask you is regarding to you buying Bitcoin and you partnering up with the city of Lugano to accelerate the use of Bitcoin, right? So do you think, and you do believe that Bitcoin will be the cryptocurrency for the future? Because right now we know that it's a store of value, but do you think that it's going to be like a means of currency transport, like the dollar, for example?
Yeah, I think Bitcoin is set to be actually internet money, right? So in my opinion, it's definitely the currency of the future. And not as the layer one will be mainly for wealth preservation or store of value, but technologies like network can enable fast payments, and we are seeing that in Lugano, right? So we have or Bitfinex itself, right? The exchange that I'm been working with for last so many years, has one of the biggest network nodes and process tens of thousands of network transactions per month. So the more this industry will scale, and the more adoption, right? All your work that you are doing with, providing content to people, that is part of the adoption. That is part of the education that needs to happen in order for people to understand this technology. The more that happens, the more we are going to see Bitcoin being also not just used as a speculative asset, but also for store value. That is already happening, and also as a mean of exchange. That is also already happening in Lugano, in El Salvador, and in other many cities.
I see. With the widely adopted Web3, I would say that will come with the widely adopted usage of Bitcoin as a store of value, and the fact that I think a lot of companies are trying to buy Bitcoin as their to be one of their reserves, like MicroStrategy. They're also accumulating a lot of Bitcoins because they believe in the ability of Bitcoin to be the next gold storage of value. And Tether now is jumping into this play too to buy Bitcoins too. I think is incredible, and the future is just inevitable for Bitcoins to be the next store of value.
Look, the question that I always ask, right? So we are going towards an extreme world with extreme usage of AI and then robotics, and we have this concept of Internet of Things, and we have the concept of machine-to-machine payments. So ask yourself, which currency do you think an AI or a robot would use? Do you think they will use dollars, or do you think they will use Bitcoin? In my opinion, machine-to-machine payments that will wipe out in terms of numbers the people's payments, right? Machines will be much more. We have many more devices in the world than people. All these machine-to-machine payments will not happen with the dollar. They will happen with Bitcoin.
Okay. I'll leave that to the audience to access and to think about. That's going to be a very good food for thought. So let's move on to the next question. Next topic that we're going to talk about, which is about the financial crisis that we have seen in the past year, and how these different stablecoins companies have been dealing with it. With part of Tether's reserves in cash and the majority in short-term U.S. Treasury bills, are there any concerns over the risks in case of a major financial crisis, even bigger than we've seen? And what are your thoughts on this?
So the role of Tether USDT is to ensure the redeemability for the dollar, right? So USDT shouldn't be better than the dollar, right? So the only thing we have to do, if there is a major crisis, right? So the only thing we have to do is to have assets in our reserves that are representing the dollar. So that's the only job that we have to do. So when it comes to our role, it's I think Tether is doing the right thing, keeping its portfolio safe and liquid. That is one of the reasons. So in order to increase that reassurance, we are keeping our additional excess reserves within the company, because we like to think that users around the world that are using Tether USDT are feeling safe about it, right? They are feeling protected. And our users are, the people that are using Tether daily are people that are living in Argentina, people that are living in Turkey, in Nigeria, in Vietnam, in Venezuela, and in El Salvador, and so on, right? So mainly emerging markets, right? So it's even more so our duty to make sure that we can provide to the people that have that are also considered unbanked, right? The people that struggle to open a bank account or have fair access to financial services. It is even more important as a mission from Tether to bring them stability and to ensure that there is this excess of reserves, so that can feel even more safe holding Tether.
Good. So when it comes to that, right, the U.S. is facing major national debts. How do you think that this will affect the value of U.S. dollar? Because I think it's affecting now China and Russia. They are coming in and they're trying to flip this over. So what do you think about the effects of that to the value of U.S. dollar, as well as the value of Tether in the future? Because Tether is heavily backed by the cash or the dollar.
Yeah, so when it comes to the role of the dollar in the future, I mean, we'll see. Definitely, there is. We all see that there is an interest, but also in Europe, right? Even I think was recently Macron suggested that Europe should just, reduce its reliance on the US dollar, right? So today, in this, especially this is a moment of global crisis, right? We come from the pandemic, right? Two years of devastation for the economies of different countries in the world. And so it's so that already affected ton of economies, especially in the emerging markets. And then the dollar has took a big hit because we see the BRICS, that are a group of countries that are sitting together trying to find a way to create a common currency, or choosing a different mean of payment for their transactions rather than the dollar. And people are suggesting that could be gold. One of the interesting things is that Tether built one of the best products around that concept, that is called Tether Gold. But nevertheless, again, when it comes to specifically Tether USDT, Tether USDT has just to be able to redeem a dollar for a dollar. So it means that imagine that we in 15 years, right? I think is a bit extreme, but imagine that in 15 years with $100 you can buy a loaf of bread. It doesn't mean much for Tether USDT. It just means that Tether USDT has to maintain the redeemability one for one. That's it, right? So our job is not to create more wealth for the USDT holders. It's just to make sure that people can always issue and redeem Tether USDT for $1, one-to-one.
Right. So here to provide stability. So, man, interesting question here, because I don't want to take too much of your time, but like now that you said it, so like for example, in 15 years or 20 years, like you said, then the dollar is losing its power. Do you ever envision a future where Tether will release another product, another stablecoin pegged to other currencies, like Russian, for example, or the yen from China, for example?
So right now we actually have the Tether CNH, that is the Tether Chinese yuan offshore. The uptake is not really big in this moment, but it took 4 years for USDT to start being used heavily. So we are not in a rush. Actually, the second best product that the second best stable coin that Tether issued is pegged against the gold. So gold is basically the commodity that I think accounts now for $12 trillion in terms of market cap. And gold is the second traded asset in the world, I think, after S&P 500 and sometimes oil. So look, I think in the end, what I like about Tether is the ability to have a clear understanding of what's going on in the world and think about what products could be useful in the future. Maybe, Tether CNH or gold, Tether Gold are, will have a slow uptake in the next months. But, if things go in sideways and the world is definitely set towards that direction, I think that Tether Gold is going to grow immensely, just because gold is understood by many. It's understood also by older generations. Gold has been the thing that has been traded and used as a store of value and a mean of exchange for 5,000 years. It's natural and has a few things in common with Bitcoin. So as Bitcoin, gold is scarce. So it's been said that more than 90% of all the gold that could be extracted from Earth has been already extracted. And so as Bitcoin, it's capped to 21 million. So they are both scarce. And also both, like Bitcoin that has proof of work, gold is hard to extract, right? So there are these two similarities that are really important. And in my opinion, right, so I'm a Bitcoiner, but, I see sometimes Bitcoiners that, have some fights with gold bugs, right? So that, they think Bitcoin is much better than gold. And I agree, Bitcoin is much better than gold. But yet not everyone is ready to understand Bitcoin, right? And the market cap of Bitcoin is much bigger, is much smaller, than gold. Yeah. is around $500 billion compared to 12 trillion. So Bitcoin has still a long way to the top, right, in order to match the stability of gold. Now, the price swings on gold are much smaller. That allows people to use gold as a store of value. And Bitcoin has to go there, right? I'm completely, I'm sure that Bitcoin will go in that direction and will become the best store of value in the world, because it's much more transportable than gold, right? So if you have to transport like 100K in gold is quite heavy. In Bitcoin, it's just 24 words that you can remember yourself.
Yeah, I think that's one advantage Bitcoin has over gold too. Is it can be used as a transfer of value. You can buy stuff with Bitcoin pretty easily. QR code, phone, poof, done. Can't do that with gold anyway. So yeah, Bitcoin is going to be the future. I'm also very much a Bitcoin maxi, and I think we are getting there too. All right. I think we're getting a bit sidetracked here. So let's get back to the topic. The next topic that I'm really interested in knowing, I think the community here in 5 Minutes Crypto are really also interested in knowing, is probably where USDT is storing your reserves at, because in the past couple of months when we research about USDC and reason why it's depegged because of SVP and all these different banks that they were keeping their reserves at, they were becoming insolvent, and so it raises a major FUD. And so I was looking into USDT and looking into where you kind of hold your reserves, and couldn't find much information about that. So people think like it's like a secret. You guys are trying to keep it a secret. I just want you to I just want you to clarify and clear that up, that it's not really the case. So where do you store your assets, and what are the risk management measures the team have in place to reduce the risk in case of like a major bank run happening?
Sure. So two things. First of all, there was a lot of FUD around the fact that, as you said, Tether would have kept its bank secret. But here's the thing, right? So let's say that, of course, we don't serve US people, but imagine that you are like, you are a person that wants to acquire some Tethers. In order to acquire some Tethers, you have to wire some funds. And if you register on tether.to, you go through, of course, there is a KYC ML process, because it's important to make sure that the primary market is protected. We are doing a real thorough due diligence. But after that, you want to send money, and we will show you exactly the bank accounts where you can send the money. So the fact that the people say, well, they are trying to hide it. I mean, Moody's, that is one of the top 3 agencies, mapped all the banks that Tether has been using and issued a report like last month. I'm sure that Steph can provide it to you guys. Issued a report, right, providing information on the different banks that we're using. And the majority of the banks that we're using are established in Bahamas. But I want to say something that is very important, right? Our major competitor that you mentioned, right, had a big issue with Silicon Valley Bank that could wipe out 30-point-something billion that they had there, because they were stored in pure cash. The reason to hold so the issue with holding pure cash in a bank is that the cash is not insured. The FDIC, that is the federal insurance in the US, is insuring up to $250,000 per account. Okay. If you have 3.3 billion in the bank, of course, you get back only $250,000, not much, right? So what will happen there is that that is a major issue. In order to solve that issue, companies like Tether stablecoins should hold US Treasury bills that are securities and use the reverse repo market in order to ensure liquidity. So these are securities. In the case of a bankruptcy, right? So let's say that the bank goes bankrupt, right? Like Silicon Valley or similar, right? Let's say in that case, the good thing about the securities like the USD bills is that they will return to the owner. So they are not going to be part of the bankruptcy proceedings. While if you have cash that is uninsured, so the cash will be part of the bankruptcy proceedings. And so with T-bills, not. So we use banking in Bahamas. You can find ton of information around, that and similar. But the rest is the most important thing is that the role of Tether is not trusting the banks. So we use the banks as a medium of receiving and processing wires, but we keep the majority, the vast majority, in securities. Of course, they are deposited within a bank, but yet if the bank fails, we get back these securities and we move them to another bank. That is the way we manage risk management. That is, I think, the most important thing that demonstrated the difference between Tether and all its competitors. The understanding of how much was important to not leave uninsured cash in the banks.
Oh, okay. That would clear so much up. Thank you so much for the answer. I would say the community for FiveMinute Crypto, we would very much appreciate that. We have a lot of questions around that, and now I can confidently say that it has been fully answered. Thank you so much for that. It was wonderful. All right, so also one of the questions from our community too, there are a lot of traders in our community, and they are very bullish on Bitcoin and on other big altcoins like Ethereum and ADA, so and stuff like that. They said that the stablecoin value is safer backed by these assets rather than cash, and I think we have established that in case of a bank run. $250,000 is like nothing, and it's safer backed by these altcoins and Bitcoin at a 400% or like 500% ratio than if it were to be dependent on the bank. So what are your thoughts on this?
I think the problem is of using like something like ADA or similar, is that the volatility of the crypto assets is and especially the altcoin is so high, right? We have seen that in some cases the volatility has been 80%, right? So we had in the past drawdowns of 80%. Right. So one of the reasons to have Bitcoin and gold, well, the majority is in T-bills and similar, but then a little bit of gold, and the drawdown of gold is historically so low, right? And Bitcoin is the other component, but again, is part of the excess reserves only in this moment. So the problem is you could try to, have 500%, so 5 times, 6 times over collateralization in altcoins. But the problem is that you would put, in order to get 1 billion of a stablecoin, you would need to have 5-6 billion in altcoins. And the issue is that imagine that you can grow to 50 billion in a stable coin that is backed 5 times by altcoins. It means that you have to have 250 billion of altcoins. And imagine now that someone will ask you 15 billion, of a redemption, around 30%, right? You would need to sell some of the altcoins in the market, and there is no liquidity for that, right? So that's the issue. In order to, it's extremely dangerous and that's one of the reasons why things like Luna never worked and so on, because the liquidity on the buy side, if the market is plummeting, is basically zero for the altcoins.
Yeah, I think that people could understand why we're not doing that. So extreme volatility and the lack of liquidity in the market. We are only sitting at Bitcoin 500 billion, and for other altcoins, Ethereum is like 200, 300 something, and even other altcoins are even less than that. So in order to have a stablecoin being backed 5 times of its value in coins, pretty much non-feasible. All right, thank you so much for answering my part 1 questions. That was really wonderful. Thank you so much. I learned so much from that. Let's move on to the second part, in which we will understand more about the related products of Tether and USDT, namely the Kit.io, the peer-to-peer encrypted and private chat, and also Tether Gold. So the first question is going to be about Tether Gold. With traditional investors looking to diversify their investment with gold, what are your thoughts behind the creation of Tether Gold, and what makes it attractive to investors, please?
So As I said before, I think Tether Gold is it could be a perfect hedge for the future. First of all, is backed 100% by physical gold held in vaults in Switzerland. So it's not some sort of it's not backed by gold notes. It's not backed by futures. It's backed by pure physical gold. So far, the market cap of Tether Gold is $500 million. So it's not much compared to USDT, but it could grow, right? It could grow immensely in the next years. So what I like about Tether Gold is that people that have in this moment, right, just like spec up a little bit. We hold gold bars that are around 12 kilos, 12.5 kilos, that are around 400 ounces of gold. Each ounce of gold is one Tether Gold token. So when you want to redeem, so if you want to acquire or redeem Tether Gold, sorry, if you want to redeem a gold bar, a Tether Gold token for a full gold bar, what needs to happen is that you have to have at least 400 ounces, 440 ounces or 440 tokens, Tether Gold tokens. That is a lot of money in this moment. It's $600,000. But we are also starting to acquire gold bars that are 1 kilo instead of 12 kilos and 500 grams and 100 grams. So we should be able in next months to make Tether Gold easier to redeem, also if you have less tokens. But see, the beauty of it is that if you are in Switzerland, if you come to Switzerland, of course you have to do the KYC AML process. But then we can allow people in Switzerland to redeem these gold tokens, Tether Gold tokens, for physical gold, and that is pretty much unprecedented. I think as I said before, the just gold will be so important in the future because it's so big in market cap. Is until 1971 when Nixon decided to unpeg the dollar and the gold, right? So before 1971, the dollar was relying on gold reserves, but then they decided to split the two things, and because they wanted to print as much as the nations wanted to print as much money as they could, and we have seen that during the pandemic where 30% of all the dollars in circulations were actually printed in 2 years, right? So that would have not been possible if US dollar would be still linked to gold. So I think that in a way, Tether Gold is returning for populations to the gold standard, to the thing that they used for the last 500 years to transact and to store their wealth.
Yeah, it's gonna still being used in the future for, we'll say, thousands and thousands of years. Next to it's gonna be Bitcoin, obviously. All right.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for that history lessons, by the way. I'm gonna re-listen to this recording. Note that in. All right. So the next question I have is about Kit.io. Please share the Kit.io app to the audience, and what inspired the team to create like a chat app while we already have like a WhatsApp, Viber, Telegram, etc.
Sure. So there is a big issue with the current mobile applications or chat applications. So imagine that you're sitting in your office and you are chatting with a friend 500 meters from you or 1 kilometer from you. It's just in the same city, right? Living in the same city. So what happens when you send a WhatsApp message to this friend, or when you are doing a video call? The information, right, of the message or the video call, the packets of the data of your chat or video call will travel thousands of miles towards the nearby data center owned by Meta, Facebook, or Telegram, or whatever other big tech company, just to then return back to your friend. So in order to send a message 500 meters from you, this message actually, currently, with the current chat applications, travels thousands of miles. That is not efficient. That is not a good use of the internet lines. Imagine how much waste we have on the internet lines, just because we are routing traffic for all the video calls, right, with Zoom and so on. We are routing this traffic internationally for no reason, because the technology already allows your device and your friend's device to connect directly, finding the shortest path. So we wanted to create a peer-to-peer video chat. Peer-to-peer means that the two people, two devices can connect directly without any central server. So we could prove, building this application, that now on desktop works pretty well and has a ton of features like file sharing and video, 4K video, everything. But on mobile is still in alpha stages, so it needs a little bit of more time. But nevertheless, we were in a situation where we could create this, leverage this technology to create a chat app that was completely peer-to-peer. It's actually unstoppable, right? So you are, not even us that we build this application can stop it, because there is no central server. There is nothing that we could do, because there is no, it's just people talking and using their devices to connect to each other. So there is no blockchain, nothing, right? It's purely, if you remember BitTorrent as a file sharing system, is exactly like BitTorrent, but for communications. So it's a stage that this technology can provide to countries or cities. People living in the same city, right, could talk to each other. Even if the city is completely cut off from internet, this application would allow people to talk to each other, because the internet lines within the city will keep working. Same thing at the country level and so on and so forth, the region level and so on. So that is a massive discovery and a massive advancement in technology. The reason why we are doing it as Tether, and it's Hole Punch. I co-founded Hole Punch and with Matthias Bus, and we started working on this technology since I think 5 to 7 years ago. Is that we think that the world has been, so right now all our communications are in the hands of big tech companies that are milking all our information to sustain their huge data centers across the world. And that is not sustainable. That is creating a ton of waste, as I said, in the communications, but that's the only way. So they don't have, these big tech companies don't have any incentive to allow people to talk freely without them being in the middle. So what we wanted to create is this diversification. And by the way, Kit is completely free and will always remain free, because there is no way to monetize it. Because again, we don't have any cost apart a few developers that are working on it. We don't have any cost, because there is no cost of any single data center or any single server. So if we arrive with 1 billion users using Kit, we will not have any different cost as if only 100 people would use it.
I'm flabbergasted, honestly. That's what the way that you describe it. I cannot. I'm not a developer. Let's get that straight out here. I cannot fathom how the data can be transferred from one device to another. Do we need to upgrade our entire infrastructure to do that? Or
internet was started like 40 years ago without the concept of having central servers. Internet protocols already allow this, but there is no incentive. So the question is, why a company like Google should allow this technology to thrive, because, or Amazon, or because they have data centers to sustain. Okay, so there is no incentive to create technologies that bypass centralization. But internet protocols are already capable of this. There is no magic in what we are doing. BitTorrent proved that, right? BitTorrent was the first peer-to-peer file sharing application that at peak had 20 million nodes, and was basically allowing to share, was I think 10% of the entire internet traffic. And BitTorrent is using similar technologies that what we did. In fact, we are leveraging BitTorrent technologies, just instead of using them just for file sharing, we are using them for real-time communication.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay, so what you're saying is, we in fact can have this technology way before, but these big tech companies, they don't want to use this tech because they want to monetize out of us, our data. And so we set up this call center. Damn, I would love to have more conversation about this topic. Honestly, I'm really interested in these things. But like, again, this is about Tether and USDT. We're here to just touch on this topic and talk a little bit about the related products. We don't really, we can't really go into details about all these things. But I would love to have this conversation again if you allow 5 minutes crypto and me personally.
Absolutely.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you so much for doing that. All right, so with that questions, I would say we're now at the end of this interview, this AMA with Mr. Paolo and Tether. So do you have any closing remarks, anything else you want to reemphasize on before we sign up?
So, to me, the most everything that we are doing on our side matters if there is enough education, right? If there is enough information for people to understand that the importance of Bitcoin and importance of cryptocurrencies. So I think one message that I would say to everyone is just, don't consider Bitcoin just a speculative asset. Understand the history around Bitcoin, why it was born, why it's so important. If we forget our history as a community, we would lose our roots, and we will go back to the centralization, the banking centralization that we had for the last hundreds of years.
Thank you so much for saying that. And thank you so much for being here with the community, Mr. Paolo. I hope nothing but the best for you, for Tether, for Key.io, and for Tether Gold. Looking forward to seeing more from USDT in the future and seeing you guys maintaining the top position.
Thank you very much for having me, and thank you for all your community for listening to me.
Bye. Thank you so much. And we're at